My name is Susan Walsh, and I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you today about English language learners. 1/4 of California students in kindergarten through grade 12 are English learners. That means that English is not their home language. And for children ages 3 to 5 in the state, the proportion is 39%. In 1998, as a result of California Proposition 227, bilingual education in K-12 was effectively ended and replaced with a structured English immersion model. In this model, K-12 students are taught in English only, regardless of their home language or the level of their English proficiency. What then of the 39% of all children ages 3 to 5 who are English language learners? How are they best prepared to enter a kindergarten environment and pedagogy that is English only? Should they too be immersed in English only preschool, as is the practice in California state-funded preschools, as a precursor to preparation for K-12? Or should they be encouraged to use their home language, as is the practice with federally funded Head Start? Conventional thinking often aligns with historical successes of immigrants who were immediately immersed in English-only environments and their ability to quickly assimilate the language and culture. Well, why then not rely on this model of yesteryear? The answer lies herein. Linda Espinosa, recognized as the preeminent scholar in this area, points to repeated scientific studies that suggest that young ELL children are not only quite capable of learning subject matter in 2 languages, but transitioning them from their first language to English before they have a firm grasp of their English language may be detrimental in the long run. How and when English is taught to English language learners affects most people in one way or another, be it professionally or personally. For example, teachers have a vested interest in the pedagogical approach. Education administrators are held accountable to systematically produce high achievement, and community members often equate English acquisition, or the lack thereof, to adopting American values. And policymakers have to balance the demands of academic standards with community input and program funding. This gamut of involvement is well illustrated by a recent New York Times opinion piece that was published March 11, 2009. It was titled "The Best Way to Teach Young Newcomers." It resulted in 856 comments to the editor. At first glance, common sense supports the long-held belief of English-only environments. The more time children spend listening to and speaking English, the faster they will master the fundamentals of the English language. However, Espinosa cautions application of this statement to preschool-age children, as the research implies specifically that for adults and older children who have a well-established first language, this may be the case. While anecdotal evidence abounds of previous generations' immigrants who successfully acquired English without the benefit of simultaneous instruction in their home language, there are 2 important points to consider. First, it is a myth that all immigrant groups were successful. And second, today's job market is not your grandparents' job market. To the first point, there is substantial evidence that Italian, Irish, Polish, and Jewish immigrant children at the turn of the century left school early and did not enter high school. Further, while immigrants typically develop social language skills, academic success that demanded more demanding language was not developed. And that condition speaks to the second point. Lack of English skills beyond social language skills did not prohibit them from finding a job, as there were many low-skilled entry-level jobs available that required only minimal English social language. This is in contrast to today's job market, which typically requires a more sophisticated mastery of academic English. While some educators are concerned that young children not instructed in English-only programs from the very beginning will be confused and their acquisition of English fluency and literacy will be delayed, research provides evidence that's contrary to this stance. Recent evidence suggests that intensive support for the home language during the preschool years will help, not hurt, long-term attainment in English. A widely accepted language acquisition theory speaks to using the child's home language as a bridge to understanding skill sets that are applicable in English. For example, young children can learn nursery rhymes, songs, extended vocabulary, and early literacy skills in English and their home language with adult support. How does this help in the long run? Longitudinal studies provide evidence of children having higher levels of language and early literacy attainment in both English and Spanish. But beyond that academic success, family impact must be considered when addressing the importance of preserving a home language, even when learning English. Anecdotal stories abound of families torn apart by lack of communication due to the abandonment of the home language in zest to Americanize young children. As a preschool English language learner consultant for the California Department of Education, I include a video of Amy in my presentations. Amy tells the story of her family being airlifted out of Vietnam and brought to California as the United States left the Vietnam War. Anxious to have her assimilate as quickly as possible, the school district placed her in an English-only preschool. And while she excelled in English, her home language languished and then all but vanished, in part because she was not encouraged to speak her home language, and then grew to intentionally shun her home language. And to what end? Speaking in perfect English. Amy tells the heartbreaking story of the loss of communication with her grandfather, who is currently in the hospital. She doesn't know how to say, "I love you" in Vietnamese, and nor can he understand English. The audience response to this video is consistently palpable. We hurt for Amy, and we hurt for her grandfather's loss. UC Berkeley researchers provide a broader impact to family dynamics where the home language is abandoned in favor of English only. Not only do ELL preschoolers in English-only programs quickly stop speaking their primary language and switch to English in school, but the switch occurs at home and results in reduced parent interactions. Parents are unable to communicate in English and they speak much less to their children. Their conversations become limited to caretaking activities such as, "Did you clean your room?" Many young children throughout the world successfully learn more than one language from their earliest years, and recent research suggests that the development of two languages benefits the brain. Specifically, there is a greater brain tissue density in the areas related to language, memory, and attention. This increased brain activity and neural density appears to have a long-term positive effect on other cognitive abilities as well as focusing on tasks. Policymakers and school administrators may agree with all the points made so far, and yet be limited by budgetary restrictions. While it is true that some geographical locations have several, if not many, languages, it makes little sense to adopt an English-only approach simply as a monetary decision. A 1992 RAND report found that over 80% of the cost to educate a child is reflected in staff. Most districts do not pay bilingual teachers more than monolingual teachers. Having said this, does it imply that bilingual teachers must be employed for every language? It would be unrealistic to secure a Mandarin bilingual teacher for a class of only one ELL preschooler's home language is Mandarin. Even when teachers do not speak the child's first language, there are many specific teaching practices that will support native language development, including training parents, community members, and volunteers to work with ELL children in their home language. Supporting preschool children in their home language will go far in allowing them to bridge from their home language towards an academic mastery of English. And by extension, the brain structures will be positioned to succeed in cognitive abilities and focusing on tasks. Absent the support of bridging from home language to English, preschool children are at risk of abandoning their home language and/or lacking a skill set to transfer from one language to another. We must dismiss the conventional wisdom of old that threw preschool children in the English lake with the advice of swim. To do so, we will need to abandon those outdated misconceptions and diligently inform our practice, our policy, and our personal convictions with current scientific findings.